Corvette was what people say is America's first sports car. And they built a first generation car from 1953 through to about 1959. And into the 60s in an abbreviated version that was, a little bit developed. It wasn't a wonderful car. The first generation Corvette started life with something called the GM Blue Flame, which was a straight six. It was the only GM engine at the time, and they basically fitted that to Corvette. And this car is the second generation Corvette, and it was better in all sorts of ways, but probably because it was the product of a guy called Zora Arkus-Duntov, who was a Belgium-born American who'd done a lot of time in Europe. He was an engineer, he'd done time in Europe as a racing driver, and he had a whole bunch of ideas that basically made their way straight into the second generation Corvette. Apart from the fact that the C2, after the C1 got it, the C2 started life with the small block Chev, it was more chassis stuff that was different for Americans in general, and Duntov engineered an independent rear suspension setup. A little bit different to the way it would come out of Europe, but certainly independent. He basically had the occupants really far back in the chassis, almost near the rear axle, which allowed the engine then to be back in the chassis as well. So the car is, you wouldn't go so far as to say the Corvette is front mid-engine, but it's a long way back. And it gave it a couple of things: reduction in unsprung weight and really even front to rear weight distribution. And those things, even though the car is not a lightweight, the dynamics that it gives the car as a handler is fairly good. It certainly doesn't do what you expect of a lot of American cars to do. It doesn't wallow and pitch and that sort of thing. From the moment you turn the key and the moment that you crack the throttles open, you can feel it's not necessarily a sports car engine, but it's a performance engine, and it has big potential right out of the box.